so much for coming here, because I know there's lots of different technology tracks going on, and you chose to put people first. So really appreciate it, and hope we can make sense of all this today. So my name is Ekta Hutton. I'm going to be the moderator. The reason why they've picked me to be the moderator is because I've only got about 10 years of experience in the field. I've been on both sides, the supplier side as well as the client side. And in my current role, I'm a consultant, but I work with FIFA. And my role is to empower the 211 member associations. What I mean by member associations is countries, to actually start producing content and engaging content. So this is a tough job, and so it's really appreciate, SVG, Silicon Valley Video Group, to pick me to be the moderator, but I'm not here to talk about myself. I'm here with two experts in two different fields, but somehow we all converge together. So I'd like Jody and Sherry to introduce themselves, and as well as their amazing companies if you already don't know about them.
Thank you. So my name is Jody Boatwright, VP Managed Services for ASG. And I've spent the past couple of decades as a service provider on the service side and providing all different types. Started out right in this neighborhood, inside a managed service, in video conferencing side, right? And as videos evolved and the needs, especially in the Silicon Valley and the Bay Area, have changed, so have the way that we deliver services and the types of talent that we look for. So today I'll talk a little bit about that in both the technical space and the creative space. I'm excited to be here. Thanks.
Great. Thanks, Jody. My name is Sherry Huss, and I am currently the head of community at a company called Freeman, which you probably know. I've only been at Freeman for 3 years, and I started as their Innovator-in-Residence, which was a super cool title, and really got me to get in and kind of understand a company pre-COVID that was about 7,000 employees and lots of contractors and union folks and whatnot. And then COVID hit, and then we went down to about 1,000 employees. Good news is we're back up to pre the Sparks acquisition to just under 5,000. So the good news is live events are back. But I got started, my whole thing, I started in book publishing and then went to software publishing. I went to electronic publishing for a company called Ziff Davis. In the early 90s, I was producing CD-ROMs and developing community on online sites like Prodigy, AOL, and CompuServe, which really weren't that interesting at the time. And I got a chance to transfer over to the events side, and my first event ever was the first inaugural Java 1 in 1996, and I was hooked. Everything about it just was so special, and I kind of never looked back. I then went on to focus on something called Maker Faire. I don't know if you know Maker Faire, but co-founder of Maker Faire, and really talking to the team here too, that kind of O'Reilly open source mentality got me out of that Ziff Davis closed proprietary, we owned it, and the world completely changed. And so community's been part of what I've been doing for a long time, and I think that community is a big part in the future of staffing and whatnot. I do have a quick little video that I wanted to run here, and it is, anyway, you'll get it. Doesn't look like it's, well, anyway, maybe. Anyway, sorry that it's so Freeman focused, but the reality is there are great careers in live events, and I think all of us are here because we want to make sure that we kind of push and move that forward.
Thank you so much for that, Sherry. I think what we wanted to start off with, I mean, although I've only been in the industry for about 10 years now, and I've seen so many changes taking place, and I can't think about not talking about staffing without understanding the changes that are impacting our industry. So I wanted to start off with Jody. What have you seen since you've been part of this industry? What kind of major changes or trends that you've seen happen?
Well, at least for me, around Silicon Valley, right? My career started mostly in the video conferencing side. So how to connect people around the world, how to boost team productivity, and how to make it easier to engage with your peers across the world with rich video content, right? And so that was the new emerging technology as I started. And so, of course, service providers had to mobilize, find talent that could help design systems, deploy systems, manage them. And I think that as some of those technologies become more ubiquitous, we move on to the next thing. And we saw a lot of blend of, great, now how do we create more content and distribute content to different viewers and audiences, especially in the corporate and tech sector around here. Now we see video being used for training, for platform education, to share knowledge in a richer way. And of course, we see it around events, but what always inspires me is that video is the vehicle to taking things just one more level, and not just looking at what our goals are, but figuring out how to work better together, either through building context or through collaboration, especially around here where change is really fast.
And Sherry, how's it impacted the events industry as well?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is that video is now not just in the general session room, right? That it's like at live events, it's everywhere. And snackable content, it's on LED screens in exhibit halls. It's being pushed to your phone, so you're seeing it. It's definitely, it's here to stay, and I think it's probably one of the most exciting areas as what we have in the event space these days.
It's amazing when I look at the changes that I've seen, and I've worked with some accomplished directors, sports directors who worked for massive events, and I've seen them working on these switches, from traditional switches to going on to working on touch screens and really struggling with those kind of changes. So when we talk about the technology changes, and then how does that relate to the impact that we have in terms of the kind of teams we build or the kind of staff we hire? What are some examples that you can give us in terms of those impacts that you've seen in terms of the way you recruit, the way you upskill people?
Well, certainly from my side on as a managed service provider, we have to be prepared to provide versatility to our clients, right? So if the client's needs are changing, if the goals of the content, the impact intended by the content are shifting, we need to make sure that we have talent that knows how to harness that and knows what the next step will be before we're there. And so versatility is I think, kind of one of the main focuses that we look at in terms of recruiting depth of talent, and also making sure that that folks are trained, engaged, and ready to go.
Sherry.
I'll say COVID did a lot for getting companies to kind of get their act together, especially around video. And I know that at Freeman, we had to lean heavily into and become experts pretty quickly at how do we deliver these online or events, and then ultimately hybrid events. I think we're finding that there's definitely a need. Internally, we're probably having more generalists, and then we look externally for more specialized folks when needed, based on either client demands or whatever project or activation. And the other thing is live events are now getting out into these like immersive experiences. So we're finding that those are things that are kind of important.
You talk about some hybrid working models as well, and I think it's really important. I know, Jody, you talked about this when we were discussing, when we're preparing for the session, that it is, how do you build that sense of community when you sometimes don't even see your workforce? They're probably working for different organizations, sitting in their offices. How do you get them to feel that sense of community or to be part of that shared goal?
Yeah, well, certainly, not just with the rise of remote work. I think even before that, as we looked at all of the different content development opportunities, where talent resides across the world, we've had more globalized teams. And more globalized teams that are, working in different environments, whether or not some folks are in studio or in venue, or other folks are coming in from home, or remote workers. There's always, well, how do we build camaraderie across that team? Usually with a little bit of video too, right? So video is that thread that's across all the remote workforce. But you mentioned another interesting aspect, which is because we are constantly reforming what it means to build a content pipeline, to distribute it in different avenues, we also need fresh skill sets, fresh perspectives, and the teams are often hybridized between, stakeholders on the client side, outside specialists coming in, various different engagements, whether or not they're full-time staffed or we're bringing day hires in. And so all of those folks are coming in with a different perspective, with different background, knowledge, and contributions. So it's really about creating an environment where everyone feels comfortable leading with their best foot forward, and that we're constantly scanning for new ways to unlock talent potential of a team. Because once you've gone through all that effort to stitch together a team from very different sources across the world, how can you make the most of that group so that you can create high productivity, high performance pipeline?
That's very interesting. And I know, Sherry, you talked about this, and this was one of your research that you found. A lot of times people think that if you're a certain age, you're not really in touch with what the new audiences are looking for. Yeah. How do you manage those expectations? And is the new workforce all very young, Gen Z?
Yeah, that's interesting. And I think the fact that all of you are here today means that you care about the future, you care about what you're learning. And I think that having this learning mindset is really key, especially because we're not in, and a lot of times we do have these hybrid work environments, and in many cases, we're not in the studio anymore. I think, it's interesting, there's so many different ways I could go here, but I think the key thing is to try to stay relevant, make sure that you're checking out and seeing what your peers are doing, and that your portfolio kind of shows that you're kind of moving things forward. I know during COVID, I ran a group called Live Team, which were folks that were, we would meet weekly. We did a half-hour call. I set up a Discord channel, because it's like, if you're home now and you're not working, let's start learning new tools. And so what's happening and what's out there. So those are things that you can definitely focus on. But I think the key thing is to kind of pay attention. What are the Gen Zs and millennials doing? They have lots of different avenues that they're putting materials out on, and so that's really key with the rise of social media and TikTok and whatnot, even YouTube. Check your work and make sure that you're kind of staying current, because that's what a lot of hiring managers are looking for too. What's your unique vision or treatment of the product is really key.
It'll be interesting to find out what that recruitment process of yours look like. So within your organizations, do you have a website? First and foremost, I think maybe before we go on to where they find talent, it's important to understand what are the main areas or skills gaps that you're seeing right now. And then and in my environment, we've always been short of broadcast engineers. I'm in acute shortage, and I think that was one of the things we wanted to start creating programs to attract more college students to even join our industry. So I just want to find parallels in your organizations. What are those acute gaps that you have in terms of skills? And then we're going to talk about where they actually find them.
I can certainly echo that, right? Finding broadcast engineers or any very technical roles is always a challenge, right? But I think it's it's important to also understand that it's not just the existing skills that people bring to the table, it's the aptitude. And so, the biggest advice that I can give anybody is to be prepared to change, be prepared to work in different ways, be prepared for the next gig, however long or short that is, and tap into your own versatility and your own aptitude to learn something new. Because we certainly have to look for base skill sets, right? But we're not hiring just to fill a role, right? We're hiring to build a team and to hopefully develop something, whether or not that's an event or content or the impact on the other end of the audience. And so, we're not just ones and zeros in terms of our skill sets. We're bringing our past experiences to the table. We're bringing our ability to navigate change as a group together. And I think that's one of the most important things that I know that I look for and my team looks for when we're trying to develop and search for new talent.
Great. No, I echo that, and I think collaboration is really key. And I think that's a real hard thing to kind of work on, especially if you're working remote. So as a leader, and sometimes some of the hardest challenges that we have are finding the leaders that can actually get a sense, have a vision for what can be done, the tools that are out there, and pulling together teams. We have a lot of generalists probably in lower level positions internally, and we hire externally then for the more specialized roles. But I suspect that that's going to change also as we move forward. But what's really key in all of this is that you stay in touch and create your community. I mean, we talked about how we, this gentleman here, how did you find out about this event? Well, it was from someone in your community, right? That raised their hand and said, hey, this is happening. And this is a really important thing here. So I think even networking among yourself, sometimes it's hard for certain individuals to go up and say, hey, I'm so-and-so and doing this. But really make sure that you do that. And when you do that, make sure you follow them and connect on LinkedIn and really try to stay in touch.
So going on to the topic of how do you find those talents, and I know for my organization it's always about the website, and then we share it on LinkedIn, so any positions you'd be able to see that, and you regularly have to check. So in your organizations, are there any other websites, recruitment websites that you go to find those talent?
There's a lot of different options out there, right? Depending on whether or not you're more technically oriented or in the creative, right? Because we're in a space that draws from multiple industries. And I think the interesting part about, searching for new talent is being open to where that may come from. So there's always new tools, right? Creatives, there's things like working, not working. There's, infinite numbers of technical sites. But as I was mentioning earlier, for us, it's recognizing that we're in a time of lots of change and we're in a time of high churn. And so, websites and tools are one way to get there, but also knowing that as we're in that space of high churn, it's the network over time that generally brings the biggest results in terms of connecting people to opportunity.
Yeah, and I will say that, a lot of, once you work with someone and if you really enjoy what they do and that network, that community is really key. At Freeman, I talked to a couple of our hiring managers, and they said 2 sites that they go to are, one is behance.net. Do any of you know that site? behance.net. And the other one is motionographer.com. And again, I imagine that, as Jody said, there's lots of different sites out there, but I know a couple of the Freeman hiring managers are going to those sites. So something to check out.
I think it's important when we talk about hiring talent, it's also about retaining talent. And is there a special strategies that you have in place for retaining talent? And I've seen this from both sides because I've been a full-time employee and I've also now being a freelance consultant. And there are 2 different yardsticks how we treat these 2 doing the same job for the organization. So Jody, do you want to touch upon a little bit about, are there any training programs in place? Are there any initiatives in place to constantly upskill?
Yeah, upskilling's important, right? And I think that we've taken a special attention towards training, not just from an upskilling point of view, but from getting to know where everyone's coming from. So boosting engagement, because I think the biggest thing that we look at is not necessarily recruiting for a role or a gig, but recruiting for a relationship over time. And so, the projects are going to come and go, the programs or larger efforts are going to ebb and flow over time. And every single time we all go through the process, a two-sided process of getting to know an employer and talent, let's make that worthwhile over time. So training's a great way to engage everyone. Yes, learn the new skills, but hopefully also start to learn more about each other and build the deeper relationships. So we put just as much focus on soft skills training and community-oriented training as we do on technical job-specific skilling.
And you talked about, Jody, just before we go to Sherry, you did touch upon the fact that you're doing a lot of them video-based. Yeah. You're creating a lot of video-based training as well for your employees. Yeah,
I mean, that's one of the funny things, right? And we work in video and design, and so when you have communities of creatives and engineers that have a high degree of discernment on what's good content, you got to deliver good content. And so, the bar's high to create the content, but also how can we, and this is a big thing for us now, once we have the platforms established, once we have the programs running, how can we actually engage our talent in the creation of that content? So, bringing in motion designers to help work on making it, the video a little bit more interesting, starting to encourage a lot more participation in the content development cycle, and getting all of our talent, whether or not it's folks from a freelance roster or long-term employees, involved in the creation. So there's a sense of ownership.
Yeah, talking about freelance, and I know in the event industry, you must be working with a lot of freelancers. And I know, Sherry, you talked about that when you hire people, you expect them to come job ready. They have to have all the skills required to do the job.
For the job that they're hired for at that point in time, yes. I mean, the event industry went from, super high we went to 10% of our revenue and we lost something like 85% of our workforce in a period of like 6 months. So we're, again, there's a lot of great business out there. I mean, I think that's a real positive for anyone that wants to hone their video skills in any area. But there really is this, again, and it's just kind of like our agency side or our groups when we're working with clients, we just kind of have to keep going. However, inside Freeman, we didn't really talk about this, but we do like monthly meetings and they're sort of show and tells. And I have to say, the things that our teams, we believe that at Freeman our people are our best asset, and I truly think that that's the mindset one needs to have, and kind of this care and feeding of your people, which is also giving them a chance to do show and tells on what they know and what they're learning. And I mean, I'll say probably most of you in the room could be up here talking and sharing right now about your key findings. And those are things that, again, and that's kind of that, again, I'll go back to that open source sharing mentality that you put it out there, and then, if you take and you put it back with even more. So I think we're at an interesting time, and, kind of going back to, again, this kind of generational shift that is definitely happening. I don't know how many of you are feeling it, but again, I think age is just a number. If you have a learning mindset, and I think that learning mindset is so key, then sharing is really important. And I'm kind of experimenting a little bit, and that's kind of the beauty of my role at Freeman, kind of matching up junior talent and senior talent, because we all have something to give, and it's kind of that, 1 + 1 = 3. And those are the things that, again, I think are really going to be important moving forward.
Are there any internship or apprenticeships as well that you have in your organizations, or mentorship programs?
We're just, again, starting back up. I will say COVID, again, did a major number on everything in the event industry. I mean, even sustainability, things that we were doing back in 2013. It's kind of like an archaeological dig now. It's like, oh, wait, we did that, building green teams. But we are starting an internship program, which is fine. I'm really interested in an apprenticeship program because I kind of think that internships are great and they're a great way for folks to kind of understand an organization, and it also probably implies for the most part that you're in a college curriculum and you're in college. But I actually think with apprenticeship, if you have the skill set, if you're willing, and if we could, match you with a leader in our company and on a project. So I'm digging in a little bit more about that. I'm talking to some folks in the Department of Labor about it, but I'm really excited about this kind of idea of apprenticeship. And we have some mentorship programs. It's been more on the design side because the design schools have been bringing people. They have portfolios. But I do think that there's work to be done there.
And on our side, it's really been focused on more the informal mentorship, right? Building a house of expertise and learning how to encourage that knowledge sharing, right? And so I do hope over time we can create a little bit more formality to that. But what I'm excited about is like just the innate interest in mentorship and knowledge sharing across the culture and community.
And we can't have a staffing workshop and not talk about AI and the impact of AI. And I know, Jody, you guys are already thinking ahead. And is there any teams that you've put in place looking at AI and how it's going to impact the staffing? And what you expect from the project teams as well might change. Your expectations of deliverables might change as well.
I think one of the interesting things about AI in this topic is being here in Silicon Valley today, right? So because we work in content, whether or not that's through events or creating training content for platform participants, a lot of our teams actually learn about the cutting edge of the technology on that front end, being a part of the greater community here. And I think that's helped a lot in our industry, maybe destigmatize the fear about AI taking jobs, right? And I hear a lot more people talk about how they're excited to use AI in the utilitarian kind of concepts that some of the speakers were talking about earlier today, and then to see with an open mind where that takes us. So if anything, I think that there's a lot of excitement and a lot of curiosity at this stage.
Yeah, we have a gentleman in our organization is running like weekly office hours using Midjourney, and it's kind of interesting to watch people. In fact, he reached out to me and say, how do I get the word out in the company? Because more and more folks are joining, and he'll give them exercises, and so we're all learning from each other. So I think that this is just kind of the tip of the iceberg. I think we shouldn't fear AI. I think we should figure out how it's another tool in our bag. And, AI can maybe do some of those laborious things that aren't that creative, and then we can actually continue to move forward. Just like desktop publishing tools, it's kind of an interesting time, but I certainly wouldn't fear it.
I think we have 2 minutes left, and I'd love to talk more about, we're in a growth industry, and the fact that we're hiring more people right now, we're creating more content. So I'd love to know about how your teams have grown, how your organizations have grown, and I know, Sherry, you've already touched upon that, but I think that's the message to our community, that do not fear jobs, because I know AI is going to create more jobs for us. We just need to change the way we think and change a little bit the way we work as well.
I think internal leaders are working hard to figure out what's the next, team, what's the next iteration look like. So plans are in the process. I don't think we're there yet. So be patient. But I will say, if there are ideas or things that you have, or what you can bring forward, those are really important, and they're going to be informative as we kind of roll out our kind of next phase of innovation.
I think on my end, it's interesting because what we really see is just an explosion of content consumption and demand. And so as there's a bigger appetite for consumption, it's faster, a lot of social first, a lot of very quick iterations, and we're also using content pre, post, during. It's just changed the speed and complexity. And so I think that provides opportunities for folks to reset, right? And so as I mentioned, we're in a higher churn time period. with volume and complexity, which means that there's always a new opportunity around the corner. So versatility.
Thank you so much. So that the future's optimistic for everyone. Really thank everyone for attending the session today. And I hope you've enjoyed it. And if you have any questions, you can find us. We're definitely here for a while. Thank you so much for attending.
Thank you all.